Thank you for joining us again today. We continue our investigation of the tragic accident here at Addison involving the Super King Air 350. This will be an update progress, and this will be our final formal press briefing. Once again, I'm joined by investigator in charge, Dr. Jennifer Rohde. Every evening we have an update progress report on what the group has accomplished during the day, so I'm going to give you the basis of that. The first area will be instructors, and today we conducted a walkthrough along the runway area. Dr. Rohde, would you care to address that, please?
It's typical with any accident investigation that involves an airport environment for us to do a formal sweep of the runway for two purposes: to ensure that there was nothing with the airport environment that may have contributed to the event that we're investigating, and to ensure that there are not any components that may have separated from the airframe during the departure roll for the airplane.
So we're also in the process of the wreckage recovery now, as we are able to document exactly where things wound up, and I believe we'll be beginning transport on that.
That's correct. Our recovery team from Lone Star Retrieval out of Lancaster, Texas has arrived this morning. They're in the process of staging their equipment and separating the hangar components from airframe components, and slowly starting the process of bagging aircraft or airplane components for its later transport to a secure facility as we continue our investigation.
James, we have a minor problem here with the Microsoft wants an update. Thank you, Andrew. So this is an exemplar picture of the cockpit of the King Air 350, and you can see here the avionics suite inside the aircraft. And when we do an investigation, obviously we look to recover as much as we possibly can. Now, yesterday we talked about that we have a cockpit voice recorder. We did not have a digital flight data recorder. However, there are chips inside here, often with non-volatile memory, and we are able sometimes to recover the information that's on those chips. So this is the external view, which we released yesterday, of the cockpit voice recorder on the aircraft. And this is one of our lab technicians back in Washington, D.C., who is now taking the recorder apart. This shows one of the chips inside the recorder, and you can see that they are in pretty good condition. So as far as the other equipment on board the aircraft, that's not fire hardened or crash resistant, so that's going to be a work in progress to see how much we're able to recover. I'd now like to read you the information that we have on the cockpit voice recorder, and this is preliminary. The aircraft was equipped with an L3 FA 2100 cockpit voice recorder, or CVR. Excuse me. The CVR recorded 2 hours of high quality audio, including the accident flight. The tower cleared the flight to take off from runway 15 about 1 minute before the end of the recording. Crew comment consistent with confusion occurred about 12 seconds before the end of the recording. Crew comment regarding a problem with the left engine occurred about 8 seconds before the end of the recording. 3 automated bank angle oral alerts began about 3 seconds before the end of the recording. A CVR group comprised of technical experts will convene in the near future at the NTSB headquarters in Washington, D.C. to review the entire cockpit voice recording and accident recording, and they will produce a written transcript. The CVR transcript will be made public when a majority of the other factual reports are placed in the NTSB's public docket for this accident. I know you're going to have a lot of questions on this, but this is all that we are authorized to say at this time about the CVR data. We'll now move on to power plants. And we've recovered both engines, the propeller assemblies from the accident site, and they have been moved. Dr. Rohde, would you address that section, please?
Absolutely. So both engines were recovered from the airframe yesterday. Both propeller assemblies were recovered from the accident scene yesterday, and they're now in a secure hangar where our team is taking the external components and airframe pieces off of the engines so that they can examine both engines further and clearly identify which propellers assemblies belong to which engines.
Thank you. In the operations group, we have requested and will be beginning the review of the flight crew records, their certificates, their logbooks, and recent flight experience. We've interviewed several witnesses and other pilots, including another pilot who flew with the accident pilot several weeks before the flight, the accident flight, on a flight from Teterboro, New York. He reported that there was nothing unusual at that time. We have additional video recordings now. We have 4 videos, and we have 2 that were taken from the end of the runway, and 1 from another hangar that shows the ground roll and liftoff of the accident aircraft. The last video that we have is from a parked fire truck that is having a dash cam looking west towards the hangar, and that shows the aircraft shortly before it collides and then after it collides with the hangar itself. You had some questions yesterday regarding the weight of the aircraft, and Dr. Rohde has some information on that.
It's standard in an accident such as this for us to conduct performance calculations regarding the airplane, what was the airplane capable of doing versus what we are seeing in the accident videos and where the airplane ended up, specifically with a concern for performance of one of the engines. So we will conduct a standard weight and balance calculation. We know the airplane has capacity for 11 people and 10 people were on board. We will take estimated weights for all of the occupants. We will weigh everything inside of the airplane that we were able to recover, noting that most items are fire damaged, and that will not provide us an exact weight, rather an estimated weight. We know that the airplane was topped off, so as we move forward, we will understand what the fuel tank configuration was and exactly how much fuel could be on board. And based on past maintenance history, we'll be able to take the empty weight of the aircraft and include that in our weight and balance calculations.
On the air traffic control side, we conducted a site visit to the aircraft tower yesterday, and that gives our people an opportunity to observe what the controllers saw. We will also be reviewing the air traffic control recordings from their side, so that gives us 2 vantage points on control or on the aircraft recording. So we've got the CVR data, and we will also have the ATC tapes. And then we are scheduled to have 2 interviews with the air traffic controllers that were on duty today, so that should happen now. On the drone team, we are documenting the damage to the hangar and also getting a very good look at what is scattered up on the roof of the hangar, which is unsafe currently now for our people to go up to inspect. Obviously, we will need to recover all of that data, and we're also looking very closely at the scars on the hangar floor, which will describe the path of the aircraft and some of the parts and pieces. And we also have to separate out some of the aircraft that were parked in the hangar, the Falcon 50, and the accident aircraft, to make sure that we have things properly done there. The last thing that the drone will do is to fly an approximate path of the accident aircraft based on air traffic control data and off of the ADSB track. So we'll now take your questions. Again, please raise your hand when I call on you. State who you are with and your name, and we'll go from there. Sir.
The question, you use the word confusion as a describer of the CBR. Can you kind of explain what that means or what?
As I stated, I cannot give you any more data than that. I will read the statement again. That's all I'm allowed to provide. It says, crew comment consistent with confusion occurred about 12 seconds before the end of the recording. Crew comment regarding a problem with the left engine occurred about 8 seconds before the end of the recording. So that's all we are authorized to release. When we get the transcript published in the docket, then you'll be able to read precisely what the crew was saying. So I realize that doesn't give you as much as you would like, but that's all we can release at this time. Yes, sir.
Jason Allen with CBS 11 here in Dallas, Fort Worth. Can you give us any context of what an automated bank oral alert is, so we can understand that term?
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Again, we're restricted by federal law on what we can elaborate right now. That's the only description that we can provide, and we do that for the protection of the protection of everybody involved, from the standpoint that we want to make sure that it's 100% accurate before we release specific details.
One of the things that will happen when we publish the accident report, because we write for two audiences, we write for the lay audience and we write for the technical audience, is that all of that will be described in great detail in the accident report. Yes, sir.
Since you have to go with NTSB 5, any idea about how much longer your folks will actually be out on the ground here doing stuff here versus heading back to DC and doing a lot of the analysis stuff?
Well, I can tell you that the headquarters team will be departing this afternoon. This will be our last formal briefing. Dr. Rohde?
So my team will likely remain through Thursday here on scene. We're still in the process of going through the wreckage, examining the wreckage. Our goal, due to the events tomorrow afternoon here at the airport, is to be finished around 3 or 3:30. But we are not going to rush our job based on those events. If it takes longer, it takes longer. But I'd say we'll be at minimum here through Thursday on the 4th.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Jason, Associated Press. Can you tell us who was flying the plane at the time of the crash?
I don't have that information, and I think any information related to who was on the aircraft is retrieved by the local authorities. And
So name-wise release. So, if you're referring directly to whether the pilot or the co-pilot was manipulating the flight controls, we do not know, nor may we be able to factually establish that during the course of the investigation.
yes, sir.
Do we know if these pilots have flown together before? I know we asked that on Sunday, but learn anything more about the relationship and familiarity between these two pilots? And secondly, the fact that there's so much damage to the aircraft is how important for an investigation will these 4 pieces of video? What's the most important piece of data you have?
Okay, so two questions. One is regarding the flight crew and whether they've flown together before, and then the second is the value of the video. So when we do the review of the pilot records and their logbooks, that may give us an idea of whether this crew had flown together before. We won't know that at this point. That's going to be part of the investigation process. As far as the video, that will be tremendously helpful to us in being able to ascertain the exact flight path and what the airplane was doing as it took off and lifted off, and then as it continued the flight into the hangar. So the video and getting the multiple vantage points allows our people to take a look with high degree of accuracy.
You said there were 4 videos. Would you describe those for us again?
The video locations. There were two cameras that sit at the end of the runway. So we have slightly different vantage points from those two cameras. So what that shows is the aircraft rolling down the runway, lifting off, veering to the left, and then colliding with the building. So that gives us two vantage points. We have another camera that was further down towards the beginning end of the runway on the east side, looking to the west, and it showed the accident aircraft taking off and showed the liftoff and the aircraft beginning to veer to the left side. And then the last camera was a fire truck that was parked to the east of the hangar, looking west, a dash cam, and that shows the aircraft coming into the hangar complex itself. Yes, sir.
Question, and this may be for Dr. Rhoda. You mentioned yesterday's briefing that the landing gear was one of the few systems that wasn't destroyed that you were able to recover. The pictures from inside, it's difficult to identify any pieces of the aircraft that are there. So you mentioned today taking out wreckage. I'm just curious how much is actually left plane versus how much was destroyed.
So the center fuselage portion was largely destroyed by the fire. The empennage, which is inside of the hangar, is a piece larger than I am. So it's still a very large piece and very much intact piece. And part of what the team will be doing today is taking those smaller pieces and putting together a puzzle, if you will, of what now remains of the left wing and right wing. So small fragmented pieces, impact damage, post-impact fire, destroying most of the fuselage area.
And then we also tend to lay those out, do we not?
Yes, yep, correct.
Yes, sir.
I guess as a follow-up to that, when you have so little of the plane, how much more difficult does that make your job and your team's job in trying to figure out what actually happened?
It certainly adds a level of difficulty. That's where the surveillance videos certainly help, and just patients piecing together the smaller pieces. So it certainly adds a difficulty.
Yes, ma'am.
Shannon Murray for Fox 4. Is there anything you can tell us about the interviews with the air traffic controllers? Anything they were able to say or that they noticed?
Is there anything we can tell about the interviews with the air traffic controllers? No, that's the short answer, because they haven't occurred yet. Yeah, that will happen today. So, and typically with that kind of information, we will get the verbatims, and that will wind up in the public docket. And as I mentioned yesterday, preliminary report probably in less than 2 weeks, we hope. And then the other information takes quite a bit longer, because then we have to correlate all of the bits and pieces, and all the experts will discuss the various things, and then we sort through. Everybody comes up with theories, but then we ultimately say, what do the facts show? So there's a lot of back and forth on that before we start to get to the point of what we call the factual report. The factual report will come out, we hope, within 12 to 18 months, and that will be followed shortly thereafter by the probable cause.
Without getting into what was said on the cockpit voice recorder, have either of y'all listened to it?
No, we haven't listened to the cockpit voice recorder. So that's being all done in the lab in Washington, D.C. So, yes, sir.
Alan Skya with KRLD. You mentioned the one pilot from Peterborough who had flown with him before. Are you the interviews you do with the other pilots? Is that just sort of like, do you show them the video and say, like, what does it look like he was doing, or I guess what do you look for when you interview other pilots? Is this like a comparison, or?
When we interview other flight crew that has flown with the accident crew, what we're looking for are their habits, their processes, their procedures, what it was like to fly with that individual. Generally, we do not ask them to analyze activities for the accident flight.
Yes, sir.
I think two clarifying things Dr. Rhoda mentioned. So the empennage survived. Are you able to see the position of any of the flight control surfaces, the elevators, the horizontal stabilizer?
We can observe what their position is as it rests, but that is as it's rest, understanding that the impact dynamics have altered things from where they were during the takeoff and departure from controlled flight. The cables that are attached to those flight controls have been compromised, So the readings that we would obtain may not be reliable. We will factually document what we can, but taking it from that point will be difficult.
The other thing, I'm sorry.
No, well, I was just going to say, when you have a wreckage that is not as badly damaged as this one of the standard things that we do is look for control cable continuity. On smaller light aircraft, they fly by wire too, but it's stainless steel cables, and oftentimes you can still have the connection to the cables. They may not move freely, but you can see where they were, and if they were broken in a certain way, you can tell that that didn't just saw through. It was still functional at the time that the accident occurred. I don't think we have that ability with the damage that we have with this wreckage.
And the other thing I was hoping you could clarify is that this person you talked to flew with one of the pilots, and you said there were two crew members. Can you describe that a little more? I mean, I'm not sure. You talked about who you think might be the pilot and that this person flew with.
So the individual that we have identified as the captain or the person, the pilot in command for this flight, my operations group chairman has interviewed a pilot who flew with the captain previously.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. You mentioned the propeller and the wing, or the propeller and both engines being recovered. Can you talk about what you can look at specifically on the left engine and left propeller that could help you, or is the damage so bad there that you may not get it?
Engines are very good at providing us signatures for if there was a structural internal failure with the engine. We will be able to see that as we're going to treat it like an onion. So slowly take the outboard pieces out and peel away to see what the damage is and understand, is this damage related to impact or is this damage related to a problem with the engine. Parts that are of concern will be sent to our metallurgical laboratory in Washington, D.C. for further examination and understanding. With the propellers, they provide also similar clues. So we have a propeller specialist with us working with our Powerplants group chairman who will look at the signatures that are along all four blades for each propeller assembly and understand what those signatures are and what they mean with regards to power thrust that was being generated at the time of impact.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay, I think that will conclude our briefing here. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will provide additional updates. You can keep up with us at NTSB_newsroom. I got it. Okay, good. Thank you for being here.